I'm sure as many of you may know, tomorrow is the International Women's Day. So in honor of that, we host our Women in AI Leadership panel. And the panel will be happening on the main stage. So you can navigate to the workshop tab where Google will be having, we'll be having their workshop. And this is going to be on the TensorFlow using Google Cloud Platform. And remember that if you attend this, you will also receive Google Cloud credits. So that's pretty exciting. And then for the Women in AI panel, the panelists will include Lair, Shirin Farrahi, and Ania Halliop. So Shirin is a principal software engineer at Cadence and formerly a hardware engineer at Oracle. Ania is a senior engineering manager at Uber ATG, and Caroline is the founder of Good AI and Women in AI, so both very pertinent, of course. Those of you that would like to attend the workshop, you may now leave the stage and join the workshops tab, so the sessions tab. And for those that will be staying here for the panel, please welcome Caroline, Ania, and Shirin.
Hi, everybody. My name is Natalie, and thank you for joining us this afternoon for the Women in AI panel. So this past year, I've dedicated a lot of my time in understanding the nuanced problem of the gender gap in AI, and something I've become very passionate about, and I've been working hard to shed light on the importance of diversity in tech, but specifically AI as well. And so I always appreciate being a part of events where I can learn and be inspired by brilliant women, and today is no exception. So shortly, I'll be joined with Shirin Farrahi, Lair, Ania Halliop, and we will be discussing their journeys in AI, the challenges they have faced, and what it takes to be a successful leader. And as always, please leave your questions in the chat, and I will try to get to as many as I can during the panel. And so, without further ado, I'd love to invite the panelists to the stage with me. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us again.
Hello.
So, of course, I'd just like to start off with getting some introductions. What does your career path look like to get to the current positions you are in, and what was your journey to where you are right now? So if we want to start off, let's, Ania, if you want to take us away on this question.
Sure. So I'm Ania Halliop. I'm actually the former senior engineering manager at Uber ATG. I'm on a new exciting project, which I will be sharing details in the future, but not today. And my career path has been in tech about 20 years. I actually did start do some AI in university. I was very interested in it at the time, but it was much more academic, and I really wanted to go to industry, and I didn't want to continue. So I've worked in many different aspects of tech, quite low level, I would say, all the way to the user. One thing I love about tech is the fact that you can always change what you're working on and pursue what you're very interested in. And a few years ago, I started getting much more involved in data infrastructure and data engineering. It felt like that was a very powerful thing for my company, and we needed to put a lot more strategy on it and thoughtfulness. And it really started making me more and more interested in just how we use data, how AI plays a role in society. And to me, it feels that AI and machine learning, deep learning, all this is extremely applicable to pretty much every company now and all the types of problems. And so as an engineering leader, it's something that I want to be much more involved with. So I made a conscious choice to go forward into that field. And so last year, I changed jobs to work at Uber ATG Lab, which was a research and development lab working on self-driving vehicles. Like very, very difficult problems to solve, basically, that haven't been solved yet. And so it felt like a great way to really submerge myself and start really understanding how we can use this technology and all the implications of it. Yeah.
For sure. That's awesome hearing about the pivots that you're making in your career. That's great. Shirin, do you want to take it?
Sure. Thanks for the introduction. I am a software engineer at Cadence. Cadence is a EDA company, electronic design automation. So we're trying to, as much as possible, automate the design of hardware. And the project I'm working on currently is automating printed circuit board design, which Printed circuit boards are in every single component, every phone, every electronic device that you use. The circuits basically need a platform to sit on. So it's a very exciting project and very similar to Ania. I come from a non-AI background, and my PhD work was actually in bioelectrical engineering. So the similarities, you're dealing with signals at different frequencies. It's useful to construct them into frequency domains, look at them in the time domain. But yeah, postgraduate school, I also wanted to work in industry, and became a hardware engineer working on the design of servers, where the speeds are much higher than biological signals. So that was interesting, going from the audio frequency range to like 25 gigabits per second all of a sudden. And now, the state of the art, it has quadrupled since I left Oracle. So yeah, the pace of technology is extremely exciting. And we're getting to the point where we do need help from AI to solve these problems that we're trying to address. I think tech is a great field for women. The team that I work on now, we're about 20 or 30, 25, it's a big team. We have 2 women, which is nice, but it would be nice to have, 50-50 parity. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, you bring up an excellent point, and it's definitely, that's what it seems like to be on a lot of teams nowadays in general in AI, but in tech, hardware, software. So that's definitely a very relevant point that you bring up. I hope we can touch on that a little bit later as well. But Carolyn, would you like to, last but not least, introduce yourself?
Yes, hi everyone. Thanks for having me today. So on my side, I have a business and in political science background, but I've started my career 10 years ago in technology, and I've always been there since. I've been working in different kind of companies, so software companies, also in a VC focusing on hardware startups. And 4 years ago, my journey started with AI. I've been working in a startup doing embedded voice recognition, so basically private by design voice assistant. And in parallel, I've co-founded Women in AI, who is a nonprofit working on bringing awareness around the lack of women in the field and what we need to build gender inclusive AI. And so I'm really, really convinced we can do good with AI. And that's why last year I've launched my company, which is named The Good AI. And that is basically empowering companies and talents that are using AI to address one of the sustainable development goals. And so gender equality is the SDG number 5. So we're also obviously addressing this topic.
Yeah. No, thank you guys all for those introductions. It's really lovely to see the backgrounds and how you guys are all still coming from such different education and different companies, different places in the world, but still you see the potential of AI and are all curious about it. And so that kind of goes into my next question, and it's, as there is this ever-changing nature of AI, and as we grow, and every year it seems to become exponentially more pertinent in all systems and all technologies. What are you personally most excited to explore in AI? Maybe it's not necessarily what you're working on right now at your company, but in general, what's something on the horizon that you're personally excited about? Why don't we start with Ania again?
Okay, I think it's alphabetical. So for me, I think, first of all, there's the broad aspect of, I feel like there's so many different challenges we have in the world that we haven't solved that I think AI could help with. So I think often in software, you're working on things that you already know how to do. And so working in AI can be quite different to that. I'm still quite interested in things like self-driving vehicles and that combination of AI with the physical world. But I'm also really interested, and I hope that one day when I will have that opportunity, is to work a little bit more on how we can use AI to help some of those really fundamental problems we have in the world, like famine or poverty, climate change, and so forth. So I feel like always in these cases is like, when I see those types of problems, I'm like, okay, what can I do? What can I learn? So then I can be one of those people that help towards that. But those are areas that I'm very, very interested in seeing how we would be able to apply AI.
Yeah, for sure. And Carolyn, would you like to maybe touch on that a little bit more? I know you mentioned the good AI. That sounds like a lot of what's maybe going on with the stuff going on there.
Yeah, well, obviously I'm fascinated by many aspects of AI. If I have to choose one, I would say it's really the capacity of AI to shape our society for good. So I really envision AI as a tool, basically, that can help correct certain behaviors we have and certain mentalities based on, the bias we have embedded in our brain. I have this, so you can have a lot of different bias, gender bias, of course, but also racist bias, homophobic bias, all these super nice bias we have as humans. And basically the idea is that if we can manage to correct this bias within algorithm, we can maybe manage to change mentality way faster than if we were relying basically on natural evolution of societies. And really have diversity and inclusion as something fundamental and just natural in our mind. Today, but when I have this talk, it's funny because people are telling me basically the opposite. How can you tell that? Because basically AI today is doing the opposite. There are so many scandals in the press, this racist algorithm, this sexist algorithm recruitment. So I'm aware there are a lot of that right now because obviously when you have a new technology, you do mistake. You think, okay, that's wonderful, we're going to use it for everything, and you do it without being cautious. You don't do it responsibly. But once you realize the risk, and this is what we've been doing in the last 3 years, you have no excuse. And even better, now you can realize that if AI will produce biases of human, and if we are able if we are aware of it, we can change the dynamic and correct the bias inside. And this is something I'm really, really fascinated with. I'm sure it's going to be very tough to do. I'm not naive, but this is very exciting. This is one of the really exciting topics for me. And basically, you can touch a lot of sustainable development goal with this idea. The number 16, which is about peace. The number 10 about reducing inequalities. You can really have an interesting leverage on SDG with this idea.
Yeah. No, those are all incredible things to look forward to. Hopefully we do get a chance to see that in the next few years, whether it's 5, 10, 15 years. I definitely am very hopeful about coming out with technology that can mitigate the bias in general that we've been seeing so much recently as well. And Shirin, what about you?
So in the short term, we're really trying to apply reinforcement learning to our problems. Because having a neural net that can solve a problem once is great, but if it can learn while we're sleeping to improve hardware design, that's really our goal to get our algorithms there. But yes, I'm fairly new to the field of AI, as I mentioned. One book that I read recently that I recommend to everybody is Life 3.0 by Max Tegmark. He touches on many of the topics that Caroline discussed. So it's and it also has suggestions on how everybody can get involved and give some input on this very important topic.
Right. Yeah. No, thank you for that book recommendation. We'll definitely have to check it out. And so kind of pivoting off what we were talking about initially in our introductions, and all of you have been in leadership positions and have been very successful in your endeavors in technology and now pivoting to AI. I'm curious to hear about what being a leader means to you, and how do you push yourself out of your comfort zone as a female leader and continue to grow and develop your skills in that sense as well, whether it's in your company or just in your team specifically. I'd love to hear some points and skills that you guys have been working on throughout the years. Shirin, why don't you take that take that away?
Sure. My leadership experience has been fairly small teams in tech, and I've been very fortunate that those small teams of 3, 4 engineers have all been really strong contributors. So there's no real challenge in the leadership technically. So it's just a matter of supporting them, making sure they're appreciated, they're working on the right things for the overall team. So for me, leadership in tech has been a very positive experience. I've been fortunate that I haven't had any real challenges there. And the other point I wanted to make is that for women, I find that leadership style is very natural, especially if you've raised children. It really does train you for management, although it's different, of course, but it's sort of a natural training ground.
That's an interesting parallel. Ania, what about you?
Sure. So for me, this is something that I feel like it's always a non-ending journey and non-ending element that you always want to continue to be working on. So there's a couple of things for me that are very important. One, you don't want to forget your roots. So I'm a developer at heart. I've seen leaders get so disconnected from what we're actually building, and they stop respecting the people and the work and the passion that's going into that. And I would never want to be a leader like that. So for me, it's always being really connected to the people and what you're trying to accomplish. The second, and this is something I always encourage because I help develop new leaders as well, is really trying to lean into the things that you're afraid of. I feel like very often people make the easy choice, or they avoid conflict in areas because it makes them uncomfortable. And I do feel like there's different ways. Everyone's going to have a different approach of how they do it, but you do need to lead into and have those difficult conversations, make those difficult calls. And the third thing to me that's really, really important is to actually really think about what kind of environment you're trying to create and what kind of values you're trying to hold up. And you can't have different values and different expectations for different people. So I'm very against the brilliant jerk that is allowed to continue and become toxic in the environment, but because they're so brilliant at their job, you have to keep them. I don't believe that's the case at all. And I will work a lot with my teams and my departments to make sure we're putting things in place, that we are holding ourselves accountable to what we say is important, because I think that's very important. As a leader, you have a lot of accountability and in a sense, a lot of power of making sure the right things are reinforced and the right decisions are being made. And I think you have to own up to it and lean into that.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point about expectations and, allowing people to obviously find their place in the team, but drawing the line for what is tolerable and what's acceptable in the workplace for sure. So that's a really excellent point.
You got to do good work, but you got to enable others to do good work too.
Yeah, and it's still a part of a team. Yeah, you can't take other people down to bring you up, for sure. Yeah. And Carolyn?
Yeah, I totally share Ania's point of view of accountability. For me, a leader is someone who is really visionary, inspiring, but at the same time, it's also someone that knows how to empower his or her or its people. So a leader should be aspiring to lead others to the best potential and happiness. So you really need to set the example, because you have responsibility toward people who believe in you and in your vision. Because at the end of the day, it's great to have a vision, but if anyone won't follow you, there is no lead. So there is no one leading. So I think very few people manage to, I think at the end of the day, to link vision, drive, and care at the same time. It's a very subtle balance. So I would not consider myself as a leader. I think there is still a very long way to go. But I guess like if what I can advise and what I'm trying to do on a daily basis is to work on my vision and to make it inspiring and pragmatic at the same time, not totally idealistic. Make it also inclusive. This is super, super important. So people feel they really belong to it. And finally keep developing, always care and empathy on a daily basis.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, I really love that point about including people as well. And we actually just got a question from the audience about imposter syndrome. I think that's something that everybody may deal with in tech, but specifically women. I think that might be a bit of a bigger problem when we come into a team with, like Shirin was mentioning, 2 out of 25. It might, exacerbate the imposter syndrome. So the question from our audience here is, how have you dealt with imposter syndrome when progressing through the tech industry, especially in your leadership positions? Shirin, did you want to take that away?
Sure. Yet, I mean, there is, thankfully, there is a big push to get more women in tech.
Mhm.
And I see that, for example, the team, when I joined, I was the first woman working on this project to automate printed circuit board design. We had a few interns, but I was the first full-time woman, and thankfully the group leader, the leader of this big effort, really valued that different perspective, and shortly after hired another full-time woman. So it always helps to have different perspectives on difficult projects. And as long as you also bring some technical background, at least in my work, having that different perspective really does strengthen the team.
Mm-hmm.
So that was what helped me out. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just to realize it's not just because I'm a woman that I'm there. I do bring a different perspective.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's a great point. In order to solve the problem in the best way possible, you need different perspectives. You need to see, all sides of the table and see how the best way to go about solving it. And I think, having women, having different minorities in the group, that's the best way. You're going to get the best product. You're going to solve the problem in the most efficient way. So that's an excellent point as well. Ania, would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, so I think this is always such an interesting question. I do find it comes up very often, which means to me that this is something that people really care about and are really searching for the answer. One thing I'd say is that every single person I've managed, and it has probably been 80% men over the years, has dealt with imposter syndrome. For whatever reason, every person's coming into their job from a different background with a different level of experience. And whenever you compare, there's almost invariably someone else that you're looking up to. Mm-hmm. And I think you actually want to harness that and let that be an inspiration versus an opportunity to push yourself down, in a sense. So I always tell people there's 2 things. One, you want to take a more objective view. Are you actually lacking some information or some skills? And you're a smart person, let's put up a plan of how you're actually going to achieve those. Right. And the second, I think it's those days where you are feeling low, where there's all these signals to you are telling you you're not good enough. That's when you want to really surround yourself with a support system. My hope is everyone does have a support system that can remind them about their accomplishments and their drive and their passion, and can sometimes get them out of their head when they go a little crazy, thinking about that they're not good enough. I had, as a developer, I was in a position once where I think I was the only female developer in 100 or 120 male developers. That's probably the worst odds I've ever, numbers I've ever had. And that does put a lot of pressure on you, because if you're putting up your hand to make a point or to say something, it's hard for people to distinguish what you're saying and versus it's the woman saying that, right? So you feel like you're holding all of women on your shoulders. Right. And so you need to sometimes take a step back and say, it doesn't matter. I'm here for me and I have a valid opinion. But the one of the big things I think with imposter syndrome, and I'm sorry if I'm going too long on it, it's just I care a lot about the subject, is that I think we need to try to bring more women into the spotlight. So part of what actually held me back from going into leadership for quite a while is that I had never had a manager that was a woman. I had never had anyone in my reporting chain that was a woman. Right. And I think I thought vaguely, oh, maybe one day I'll be a manager or something. But I never aspired to be a director, or a senior director, a VP. Now I'm like, I'll turn down a VP role if I don't feel like it's good for me. But back then, it wasn't even my horizon. Mm-hmm. And so what I think, And how I've tried to help towards that is I used to run a tech meetup for about 5 years, where the goal was to have as many women as possible speak on things that they work on a technical perspective.
Mhm.
So you can go to a meetup and you can see other women in their fields being good at what they do. And I think we need more of those positive reinforcements that, yes, maybe there's less of us right now, but we're out there and we're doing amazing work, and we can get inspired from one another, and we can get reinforced that we belong in the field. And I think that will help like the next generation of people as well realize that they 100% belong here, and they have so much skills and experience and passion and drive that they're going to help make the field even better, especially in a field like AI, which I think will, I personally think anything that women decide to do, we make it even better. So I'm like, come here. This is awesome place. You know, it's super creative. It's super cool. You belong here 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that answer. I really appreciate it. And I think it's nice to hear that, you know, regardless of your gender, you are going to feel maybe at one point or another in your life that maybe this wasn't for me, or maybe I bit off more than I can chew. But I think there's definitely steps, and like you were mentioning, the steps that we can all take to make each other feel included, and, you know, feel like not to belittle each other. It's and have these aspirations that you mentioned. It's great to put strong women like yourselves in the spotlight. So that's a great answer. And Carolyn?
So yeah, that's a really great answer, Ania. And I was thinking when you were talking, so the work we're doing at Women in AI, so basically we are organizing some way talk, and the idea is exactly the same. And you mentioned it's to put the spotlight on women who are technical, and we're pushing them to go on stage, and there are 3-4 of them, and then you, an expert, you can also tell the world and deserve the sun to shine on you as well a bit. So this is great. The support system also is a great concept, and I must say I'm one of the 2 co-founders of Women in AI. We have 6,000 members all around the world, and even though every day I feel this imposter syndrome, when I speak here, I feel the imposter syndrome. When I prepare my TEDx, I feel the imposter syndrome. I'm just like, okay, oh my God, I'm not gonna make it. I was doing the rehearsal yesterday, and the coach told me, well, it's not enough precise. Maybe you're giving too much example. And I was, oh my God, I can't do it. Like I'm no one. I'm not even tech. So it's really a burden we have to deal with on a daily basis. And I must say the fact to share this feeling with other women around you is so helpful, and community is what we have. And women are super strong at supporting each other, bringing a lot of care. So we definitely need to leverage on that. Of course, we also need a lot of role model, way more role model, so we can imagine that one day we're gonna be this boss, we're gonna be the manager and the director. And so we're working on this today with women who are working. But what is key as well is to prepare the next generation, the younger kids and the younger women, and show them that they can study STEM. So at Women in AI, we're also organizing this way camp for teenagers, because when they're 12, 13, 14, they're still very, they're interested in robotics and stuff. We're doing some little workshop, and they're so big fan about it. But when they turn 17, 18, you're losing them because it's too, they think it's not for them. Their parents are telling it's not for them. And this is why we really try to, basically the idea is to keep the contact with these girls, and so they will not, eventually decide not to go. And this is what is super challenging as well. But I'm sure we're gonna have better results in the next years, thanks to the work of all the nonprofit. I'm naming Women in AI, but you have Women in Machine Learning, Women in Data Science. There are so many nonprofit doing an amazing job.
Yeah.
So fight against the imposter syndrome.
Can I add just a little thing to that? I feel very inspired by what you're saying, and I the one thing I wanted to add is I think we always approach the imposter syndrome as if it's a bad thing. I actually think when it happens to me, I actually try to say, no, this is good. That means I'm pushing myself. I may be doing something, that's out of my comfort zone. That's not a bad thing. And so I do try to, when people are experiencing, try to change their perception that it's helping them grow and push themselves. Like, I'm so inspired that you're doing a TEDx talk, for example, and like nothing is a straight journey. And so I just wanted to add that part there as well.
No, yeah, it's definitely it's a combination of, you know, validating that it's a real feeling that everybody has, and at the same time it's, yeah, like you're not going to change if you just put yourself in situations day after day where you're
Exactly.
comfortable and, you know, you feel at home. Like that's not where you're changing your life. That's comfort, and it's risk versus reward, I guess, at the end of the day. But definitely validating that feeling of imposter syndrome, and having conversations like this is really important. And another thing you mentioned, Ania, earlier was, you know, being able to get things done in your team, and you know, being able to kind of get over the imposter syndrome through like kind of proving yourself in a way, and not holding, you know, all of women on your shoulders. But I kind of leads me into my next question about what you guys think is a really important skill to have when it comes to working in industry, whether it's just tech in general or AI specifically. I think it's a little bit of a difficult question, but skills in general, whether it's technical or personable, organization wise, I'd love to hear what you each think is important. So if you want to start, Ania, I'd love that.
Sure. So there's different parts. I'm thinking about for AI specifically. I think one of the things it's having is not accepting what you see, in a sense. So it's so much easier to build machine learning model that actually isn't doing what you're hoping it's doing. Right. Versus like when you're writing software, it's much easier to validate it's actually working the way. Yeah. So playing that kind of devil's advocate and really challenging what you're seeing, I think is an incredibly important part of AI. And I think without that, it'll be far too easy for right now, but this is a relatively newer field that a ton of industries has started using, that will have much more models that are biased or doing things that we don't actually want them to do, right? As a second point, which I think is just more general in tech, this is something that for me, when I really look at the people that have embraced tech and continue with tech, to me, is having that thirst for knowledge. So tech is ever changing. There's always something new. It's not a field where you learn it and then the next 10 years you coast on it, right? I mean, you potentially could do that, but I think you lose so much of that excitement of being in tech, and also so much of it really limits your options of what you could work on. And so for me, I feel like I reinvent myself every like 5 years. And the reason for that is because there's just so many new exciting things that have come onto the stage. And I think having that beginner's mindset and telling yourself it's okay to leave an area where you're now an expert in and now go to a new area where you're more relatively a beginner, that's both great for your mind, but it's also great for your career. And so I think a really important skill in tech is having that, I don't know, humbleness to start again and to be a learner.
Yeah, and definitely like you all mentioned, it seems like everyone's kind of taken pivots in their careers, and that's what kind of has like led you guys to be where you are today, is, you know, taking a step back and saying like, oh, what can I do next, or what do I really want to be doing, and what's on the horizon. So yeah, that's definitely an excellent point. Shirin, what about you?
Yeah, I was going to say thirst for knowledge. So I agree very much with what Ania said. And it helps if you enjoy the project, then, you know, it doesn't feel like work to be learning about it. And if it's new and exciting, you just want to work on it. So that has been my approach. And one thing, my current team, we have a book club where once a month someone chooses a different book, and they're often about technology, but sometimes they're completely unrelated. And having that exposure to other areas, I like to listen to like business podcasts or newsletters, because that's a different perspective. They often talk about tech, but they take a different perspective from my background. So just seeing different perspectives when you're learning is a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah. And Carolyn?
So on my side, so not being a tech person, I would say that, like, if I'm gonna hire people in the coming months for the good AI, what I really value for someone who is already kind of very technical is the capacity to understand why they do what they do, why they do AI. So if they are driven by something related, of course, to sustainability, responsibility, I really appreciate it. And also, when you do AI, I'm also super sensitive to tech people who are studying all the ethical aspect of AI, because, as I was saying earlier, when you do AI, you need to do it responsibly. So I really appreciate the double knowledge, technical and also ethical side of it. And what is super cool today is that you can easily get access to this knowledge. There's so many courses online, as all you guys, I guess you know already, but the big guys are delivering they're providing a lot of courses about this, and they're free. So yeah, there is no excuse, guys.
Yeah, that is an excellent point, and a great resource as well. So this is kind of a follow-up question, but it's something I'm curious about, and I know not that I think we kind of have a general idea of what the skills are we need in tech, and it kind of follows through with what you three were saying. And I think anybody who's in tech right now studying it, or is interested in being in industry, kind of is already showing some of those skills. But I'm also curious to hear if you feel as though there's any skills that are overlooked when it comes to being in a computer science or computer engineering, or just engineering degree in general, and going into industry, and something that you maybe find as a team, like in a team player, or as a manager, leader, something that you find students often overlook when it comes to going into industry. Shirin, do you want to start us off on that?
Sure. I should say I'm really not a computer scientist. I'm an electrical engineer who works now in software. And I think for other fields, the best skill from electrical engineering is really what I mentioned in my introduction, being able to think in the frequency and time domains. So, if you want to take a short course on edX or any other free learning platform on Fourier transforms, if you can get a good feel for that, I feel like you've mastered the key skill of like an electrical engineer. And it's helpful in many different areas. Anything that has a signal, you can look at it that way. So those are my 2 cents.
Yeah, no, that's a great, it's a great perspective as well. Thank you. Ania?
So can I do 2?
Yes, yeah.
So for me, I think one is very much communication. Software is not a field you do alone. So much of what you're doing is communicating with other people, having discussions, trying to work together to come up with the best solution for something. And people who can articulate their thoughts, who can do that in a verbal or written form, I think those things are very, very important. And not enough time is really spent to that. It's like, you're not going to just be sitting there writing code. You got to learn to talk to people. So to me, that's one. The second part for me is actually, I was trying to think about how to name this, but I guess it's like thinking. So it's so much fun writing and creating and having a finished product. But I think having that step back and asking, why are you doing this? What are you trying to solve with that? And putting in that kind of thoughtfulness, I think is really, really important, because you're going to, especially as you go deeper in the field, you're going to be working on more complex things and have more challenging questions you're going to have to ask, where you're going to do something and you can deliver it, but if you do that, you might have security or privacy implications to your customers. I think this is we've touched upon, this is that kind of ethical, and sometimes the ethical is like these very, are you dumping oil into the sea? Like, it's very obvious this is not a good thing. But other time, there's these small decisions you have to be making all the time as you're creating software. That I think, so to me, I really value that ability of people to actually stop, think, and decide on the path forward before just jumping in and starting to code. So that's the fun part, but it's like doing the more responsible abstract analysis, I think, is really important as well.
Yeah. And that's an excellent point too. I think you brought up communication. I think that's something that across all fields, wherever you are, wherever you end up, it's that's definitely the number one, because there's rarely a job where you're going to be working alone, always. And so communicating your ideas in a respectful way and in a way that is efficient and lets people understand exactly your perspective, I think that's very invaluable to have in any industry.
And to me, communication also captures listening and really trying to understand what other people are trying to say. So it's a two-way. So it's not just like getting your point across, but it's really keeping an open mind to what other people are saying. Study that, everyone.
That's a great point. And Carolyn, yes.
Well, on top of all those great answers, I'll say from what I've seen when I'm helping some companies recruit some AI talent, they're often looking for some industry-specific knowledge. So I'm aware it's kind of tough for students who are fresh in the market to have this industry knowledge already, but it's always a plus to have an idea about a certain market and not to be only tech, but to have maybe also a business understanding of things in an industry, because then it's going to be way more faster to adjust the tech to the specificity of the industry of the company. So if you guys have the opportunity if you have one industry and you like, don't hesitate to study it and bring this on the table when you are in an interview.
Yeah, that's definitely very insightful, and it's good to hear, like, you can always do learning outside of the classroom as well. It's what you're interested in, and that's at the end of the day what you all mentioned and you reiterated. It shows when you're passionate, it shows when you're interested, and that definitely sets people apart from just wanting to just being interested in AI. So
and we see more and more talent coming, with double degree like law and AI, and they can do that because of all the online courses. And this is going to be really fantastic to have this great talent coming on the market. Like I'm really looking forward to seeing them thriving.
Yeah, no, it's definitely exciting, and I really appreciate having you all today as panelists, and I'm sure the audience has learned a lot from everything that we discussed today. So once again, I really, really appreciate you all being here. Thank you for coming, and of course, happy International Women's Day tomorrow.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you very much.
Pleasure meeting
Thank
you
guys.
Bye-bye.